The husband brought his pregnant mistress from a business trip and he gave his wife to the banker for debts, but seeing her a year later when his daddy coming back from his business trip, little Jerome asked soon son Bertha. Ortiz replied, "No, I like it when he's gone. When he's not here nobody interrupts me watching cartoons and we go to the playground more often." Unexpectedly answered the son. Bertha sighed with disappointment. Now even the child is against me. Yes, her marriage with Michael had long been strained. Bertha, as a smart woman, couldn't help but notice it increasingly. When he stayed home he snapped at his wife and son, nitpicked over trivial matters and sometimes for no reason at all. Wasn't this the reason for his frequent business trips? Because she simply couldn't see any other reason for his frequent absences. Michael Ortiz was in business, mostly unsuccessful. If not that he was bankrupt, it hadn't come to that, but mostly thanks to her. Bertha, no, she didn't work in her husband's company. Her status was modest, a housewife, but she understood something about business. 3 courses in economics plus a natural inclination allowed her to grasp the business matters and sometimes give her husband very sound advice. It's just a pity he didn't listen much. He often brushed her off, expressing dissatisfaction. "What do you understand about it? You're not even a decent housewife. Last week you burnt the cheesecakes and it's always the same." So he struggled as best as he could, and when something didn't work out once again, Bertha understood he didn't listen to her advice and so, but she avoided talking about it. She knew it would lead to the same thing. "What would you understand if I listened to your advice? I'd be scavenging in the dumps by now." And so he started going on business trips more often. Why? For what reason? To all questions again. Negotiations, closing deals. It's none of your business. If you don't understand, don't interfere. Well, Bertha didn't interfere. Sometimes she even thought it was his business, and in the end, if the business collapsed altogether, she wouldn't be particularly upset. There wasn't much benefit from it and the worries were overwhelming. Let Michael get a job somewhere as a manager and they would live peacefully, but no, he already saw himself as a hotshot businessman, so he kept spinning in circles. Things weren't going well, debts were piling up, the family had practically no income, there was no home of their own, and when there was he behaved in such a way that even their 5-year-old son was fed up with him. So he left now, and when he would return no one knew. "I'll return when I return and wait for him." Worry. When Barra calls he gets angry, he has business to attend to and she distracts him with such a situation. Suspicions would arise in anyone. Bertha had her suspicions too, but she brushed them off as if they needed this on top of everything else. If there wasn't trust in their shared life, what would remain? Only divorce. Such thoughts had already come to mind. Why hide it? Anyone could guess when a quarrel followed by an argument and then vice versa, but they loved each other, not just in the past, now too. At least she wanted to think so and believe in it. And where could she go? They shared the apartment they moved in together after getting married. Back then in the very beginning they loved each other and knew it was forever. She dropped out of college because she believed in her beloved, believed he would be a good businessman and everything would be wonderful. And now more and more often she realized it was all in vain. But then Michael's return from a business trip showed just how much he didn't return alone but with a woman. At first Bertha wasn't even particularly surprised or worried. Well, maybe the wife of some friend who happened to come along. It didn't even cross her mind what Michael said after his wife politely greeted and let his comp companion into the apartment. "Meet Bertha, this is Amanda Walters, my future wife." Even after these words Bertha took them as a silly, inappropriate joke. She even made a joke herself about a harem of beloved wives, but Michael apparently decided to immediately clarify everything. "No, it's not how you think. Amanda really will be my wife. She, as you see, is expecting a child." Indeed, it was noticeable from the figure of the guest. It's unknown what stories Michael told his Amanda during the genesis of their relationship, probably the familiar tale of all married men about the sick old wife with whom there had long been no relationship, because only that could make a girl come to someone else's home. Now she, a clever person, realized that everything wasn't as she was told, and she stood there not knowing where to look. She was confused and even somewhat frightened. "Okay, but why to us?" That was all Barra could squeeze out. "And where else? I told you, pregnant, nowhere to live. What should she do? And not to us but to me. You Barra can start getting ready, and oh, here's Jerome." He noticed the son peeking out of the room. "Come here. Let's get acquainted with your new mommy." "Yes, Amanda, you can leave the boy with us for now or forever, whatever works for you. Don't stand there like statues. Amanda, come on into the apartment. Everything here is yours now." And he decisively stopped off, patting his son on the head as he went. He decided to let his wife's current and future sort it out on their own. After his words, Bertha felt as if she were holding a heavy cast iron skillet in her clenched hand with which she could now but Amanda's growing belly, Jerome clinging to her in fear, and this girl. But if she allowed herself any impudent act, said something offensive, but no, she stood there clenched as if that skillet were already over her head, eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, almost inaudibly, hesitating to enter the apartment. "How could you?" Bertha asked her. "You knew he was married." "Yes, but he told me completely differently," she exclaimed in a half whisper. "I understand. And you know I really have nowhere to go, and the child I mean Children will be born soon, they say it'll be twins. My parents kicked me out, my father will kill me if I go back. And Michael said you wouldn't mind. The guest Hurley explained, well, I don't mind, but what can I do now? I'll just have to swap the apartment, half of it belongs to me and my son. If you want, Jerome can stay with us for now. Amanda began more boldly, but Bertha stopped her. Just don't touch my son. No, no, of course not, I didn't mean it like that, just if it's difficult for you for now, the mistress babbled, gradually regaining her composure. Well, after such news nothing will be difficult for me anymore. Bertha cut her off, feverishly thinking about where to go. She didn't intend to stay in the apartment with this couple, and you come and don't stand in the doorway until it really is all yours for now and forever, Michael declared, apparently having overheard the conversation through the door. Don't rush about swapping anything in any way. Let's go, I have a confidential conversation with you and you. Amanda, come on and make yourself at home, don't be shy. She wanted to cry, wanted to lash out at her husband, make him hurt as much as he hurt her, and they still had to think about where to go after this. And what does he want to talk about? Apologize, as if something like this could be forgiven. But it seems she overestimated her husband now, apparently former. His appearance at home with his pregnant mistress in front of his wife and son turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. Sit down, Bertha, he said in an official tone like a supplicant in his lofty office. I understand your outrage, it's entirely justified. Let's not talk about it. I'm not outraged, I've wanted to leave you for a long time. You're a slimeball, a failure, I have nothing to do with you. Bertha knew how to jab at her husband most painfully and wasn't going to spare him. The official tone indeed vanished. Her husband now spoke in falsetto, a clear sign of agitation and restrained anger. Well, I just anticipated your moves. Fine, leave. No one's going to cry, especially since I'm not alone. But you owe, I must tell you, we will, mostly you owe a huge, no, actually an enormous sum to the bank, so you'll have to sell your share of the apartment and you'll work off the remaining debt yourself. I don't know exactly how, Michael blurted out, writing either from anger or nervousness. What are you talking about? What debt? I haven't borrowed anything from anyone. Bertha's tone cooled, finding her husband's words not just an empty threat. Anything could be expected from him. Michael sensed this and straightened up. How could you understand it? A madam economist with 3 years of college. You didn't even see that from the very beginning the business was unprofitable. I was barely holding on with loans, which I simply stopped getting, so then I started acting under your ID, meaning I took out loans in your name, and now it's your turn to repay them. Bertha really didn't want to show her husband her confusion, but his words truly knocked the ground out from under her feet. She immediately believed everything said and realized that fixing the situation would be very, very difficult. On the other hand, she needed to fight for the apartment, for her freedom from debts, and that perhaps was possible, but to fight she needed strength, and where to find it after she found herself at the epicenter of such events? At the very least she needed somewhere to sit, cry, think, and then decide how to proceed. She stood up, trying to maintain at least the appearance of composure. Okay, Michael, I'll think about all of this and hopefully make the right decision. Don't be upset if it's not in your favor, she said, then left the room, quickly packed her and her son's essentials and went to her friend's place, hoping she would accept him for at least a few days. With this friend they were like sisters, even closer. They went to school together, then admittedly to different colleges, but they never lost touch. They got married in the same year. Admittedly, Mary Banks didn't have children, but her husband was much more successful than Michael, for which he paid. Apparently he was killed by his competitors. Mary became a wealthy widow, but since she got married not at all by calculation but out of immense love after her husband's death, she didn't think about any new relationships. She lived alone, interacting with people without much enthusiasm, making an exception only for her old friend Bertha and her son, of course, who was her godson. That's why she eagerly answered Bertha's call. What's the matter? Come over. Of course, I'm always happy to see you. Mary lived in a small country mansion where there was indeed plenty of space. Jerome, who loved his aunt enthusiastically, demonstrated his excitement about the upcoming trip, although it was clear the situation at home had greatly frightened him. Don't worry, sweetheart, everything will be fine, his mother reassured him. Things will settle down, you'll just see your dad much less often. It's okay, I rarely saw him before anyway. But who was that lady with him, and why did he say she's the new mom? Don't pay attention, it was just a tasteless joke from your dad. There are no new moms. You know that. In Mary's house it seemed like her son had forgotten about his troubling questions. There he was given complete freedom, which she didn't hesitate to take advantage of, and Bara finally had the opportunity to cry. Can you imagine Mary? Such treachery. Why would he do this to me? She sobbed. Stop crying, Bertha, it's not worth it. Calm down, you need to sort things out with him like a grown-up. You're smart, strong, go straight to court and seek justice there. You won't get anywhere with these people on a human level. You'll have to go by the law, and let him not doubt it. He will be held accountable for everything. He might be held accountable in court, but what about us, Jerome and me? Although I don't even need him to be accountable, I don't know where to start. First, we'll figure it out tomorrow with a fresh mind, but for now lay down and get some sleep. Morning is wiser than evening. I'll put Jerome to bed myself, don't worry about him in the morning. Bertha did wake up feeling refreshed and determined, but the decision she made was not what her friend expected. I'll go to that bank, to the director, I'll explain the situation to him and see what he says. Oh, are you sure about that? Mary doubted. Think about it, can these bankers be moved by pity or anything like that? I won't go there to cry or Complain? I'll just explain that I didn't take out those loans. Michael manipulated things in some fraudulent way, and this banker, whoever he is, should understand that it's impossible for me to repay such an amount. Who am I, an unemployed single mother of a young child? Let Michael deal with it, or his employees who hand out such sums blindly. Whether I achieve anything or not is another question, but I need to talk. Bertha herself didn't really know what to expect from this conversation, and she had no idea who this banker person was, so she was going in blind, but she didn't see any other way out. She didn't want to get involved with the courts just yet. I hope to resolve this issue somehow peacefully, she thought when Bertha explained that she had come for a personal matter. An administrator approached her at the bank. Ryan Atkins is here, but he's not feeling well, so he probably won't be able to see you. Can I help you with your issue? Still, please inform him I don't think it's within your competence. This is regarding a rather significant debt. Bera spoke so convincingly that she was escorted to the manager. After all, she expected to see a grumpy old man like Mr. Scrooge sitting on piles of money, but no. Ryan Atkins was quite young, barely older than her in fact, but it was clear that he was unwell. He was pale with dark circles under his eyes and his face was constantly contorted with pain. Bertha immediately felt uncomfortable burdening this person with her problems. Her resolve waned, but she was already here, so she needed to at least explain why, and she began to explain how she ended up owing money to his bank. Yes, I understand you seem to have become a victim, and what's most unfortunate is a victim of someone close to you. Yes, but you understand I can't repay such a significant astronomical sum, neither in parts nor all at once. I'm not employed and it's uncertain when I'll be able to start working and how much I'll earn. I'm not going to demand repayment of this debt from you. I mean, say something like these are your problems. It's become our common problem, hasn't it? So I can offer you a job at my bank. The salary will be decent and you can use part of it to repay the debt. Does that sound like a suitable option for you? Ryan's proposal would have more than sufficed for Bertha, and she liked the man himself. He inspired trust and seemed genuinely sympathetic to her situation, but she was a realist and didn't take on tasks she knew were impossible. Yes, you understand correctly. It could have been a lifesaver for me, but I don't have a completed education. I finished my studies on the third year due to personal circumstances, and I have no work experience whatsoever. Well, that's not such a big problem. We'll find you a suitable position. Your education still allows you to start working. You can't be called completely ignorant, can you? Ryan smiled, and that smile made Bera feel more confident. Suddenly a small pendant fell out between the buttons of his shirt hanging around his neck. He followed the visitor's gaze, smiled slightly embarrassedly, and explained, it's sort of a talisman. It's hard to call me truly religious. It always shows up on people somehow. It seemed like a good sign to her, and she agreed to the offer. Bertha returned home to Mary feeling uplifted. She had a job, the opportunity to live independently without constantly worrying about that damn debt. Can you imagine, Mary, what a good person that manager turned out to be? Now I'll have the opportunity to rent an apartment and live peacefully. That's great, of course. Congratulations, but how will you deal with Michael? Are you really going to put everything on hold like this? No way, but first I need to start working. It's a big plus, don't you agree? I'm afraid this couple will try to claim custody of Jerome from me, and they'll have every chance, but this way they won't. I'm working, I have a stable income, housing, so they have no grounds to complain. Well, agreed. Well, you can stay with me for a while. I don't mind, thank you, Mary. I'll have to do that until I find an apartment and get my first paycheck, but I won't stay on your couch forever. A few days later, Bertha started her first job. Ryan himself took her to the department, introduced her to the staff, and told them to be attentive to her, not to refuse help and support. Since she had no experience, he probably shouldn't have done that. The staff were not pleased that someone who hadn't even completed their education and had never worked before would be working in their department. Well, look who's here. So they took on an intern, and they even gave her a full salary like a regular employee. Oh, does she understand the position is putting herself in here? No, she's walking around all happy and content, acting like she doesn't need anyone. Her boss even brought her in himself, and compared to her were just passersby. Who is she to him anyway? A relative or no? Doesn't seem like it. I can't imagine why he's doing this. Well, why, that's his business, but why do we need extra work? Make sure she doesn't mess anything up, answer her silly questions, and double check every number she touches, like we don't have enough work of our own. All these conversations were held behind Bera's back, but she of course heard them, and what she didn't hear she guessed from the unfriendly looks of her colleagues. It was unpleasant, of course, but she understood people don't like favorites of the management anywhere, and she tried to do her duties as best as she could to avoid adding more work and trouble for others. And the fact that she didn't make any friends at her new job was even helpful, if not to her personally, then at least to the common, cause she was being ignored, considered almost a fool whom the boss hired for some sick reason of his own. Meanwhile, she could quietly delve into her work and see how others worked, and she inadvertently became a witness to a conspiracy in progress. One group of employees decided to appropriate a portion of the income from an upcoming deal for themselves, and if it weren't for Bertha's attentiveness they would have succeeded because Ryan himself was feeling worse and worse. He wasn't even showing up at work every day anymore, staying informed remotely, and he wasn't being told everything it turned out, and if it weren't for Bertha he could have suffered serious damage. I see I wasn't mistaken in hiring you, he said. Please bring the relevant documents to my house. I can't come to the bank, I'm ill, but I must stay informed. B went to the boss, taking the documents with her. She was driven there by a shower as Ryan lived in a country mansion. From office conversations she knew he had a wife, and the attitude of the boss's subordinates towards her was not the best. Her name was Virginia, and all the employees blamed her for not taking good care of her sick husband, and some even believed that Virginia was partly to blame for Ryan's illness, but Bertha didn't delve into that. What business was it of hers about someone else's wife? She wasn't planning on becoming part of Ryan's family. Their connection was only through work. She expected to see the boss's wife as a sad, worried woman, and that was understandable. Her husband was ill, but she met a cheerful, radiant lady who clearly didn't have time to be sad. Bertha had only just begun to explain that Ryan had called her for work when the hostess waved her hand and told the elderly woman, who had come out, probably a housekeeper, take her to Ryan's office. He'll figure out why she's here. And she hurriedly left, the housekeeper grumbling something disapprovingly under her breath, escorted Bertha to the boss's office, let her in, and Bertha was surprised at how the boss looked since their last meeting, which took place a few days ago. He had visibly deteriorated. Hello, are you feeling unwell? Maybe we should postpone our conversation for a few days, Bertha suggested. No need, it seems I'll always feel unwell now. Yes, my health is completely deteriorated. Let's get down to business instead. Did you see a doctor? What did they say? The guest couldn't calm down. After all, she knew that Ryan was perfectly fine not long ago. What happened to him so suddenly? Why is this young man melting like sugar in boiling water? What's with these doctors? He waved off. They don't say anything, can't figure it out themselves. Enough about that, Bera. I'm very grateful to you for exposing the conspiracy, but let's talk about something else. They worked on business matters for over an hour, and eventually Bera realized that the boss had weakened significantly. I'm sorry, but I can't burden you anymore. You're not well. Lie down, rest, and I'll call your wife or the housekeeper right away. You shouldn't overexert yourself. Yes, you're probably right, he replied weakly. I apologize for not seeing you out. They said goodbye. Bera left, and in the corridor, meeting the housekeeper, she said, please go to Ryan. It seems he's not feeling very well. Why would he? Sure. Here's the continuation of the text. Feel well here, the woman agreed, escorting the guest to the door. He works nonstop. Those doctors can't figure out what's wrong with him, and that may have a wife of his is wandering around. Who knows where? Wife? Bertha asked. Yes, Virginia. Damn, such a spouse. Her husband is sick and she's busy dressing up and putting on makeup in the morning. Isn't it because of her that he got sick? What else could it be? Oh, I wish he had a good granny. I'm afraid Virginia might be up to something. Watch out for her. Such thoughts might have amused Bertha. She didn't believe in witchcraft and grannies, but as she left she realized that perhaps the wife wasn't so innocent after all. She saw Virginia passionately kissing some young man outside the gates. Maybe Ryan found out about her affair and got sick, Bertha thought on her way home, feeling sorry for the banker who was literally dying in the prime of his life. But what could she do to help? Perhaps tell him about his wife's affair, but wouldn't that look like gossip? If he already knows, then definitely, and if not, she might only worsen the situation with this news. And very soon the situation escalated dramatically. Ryan became so ill that he was sent to the hospital, but the doctors still couldn't make a correct diagnosis. They began to insist that the patient needed to be transferred to the capital, but unexpectedly the wife intervened in front of the doctors. She burst into tears, went into hysterics, and wringing her hands cried out, if fate decides he's going to die, then let it be here at home next to me. Here we can bury him with our relatives, and if he dies in the capital, then what am I going to do? Meanwhile, Ryan fell into a coma. His faithful wife did not show up at the hospital. She was more often seen striding around the bank with an important air, giving orders, one more foolish than the other. Most of the employees, who had already mentally buried their boss and resigned themselves to the bank's collapse, did not argue with her, and only Bertha dared to point out the errors in her decisions, for which she paid dearly. The new mistress, intolerant of objections, pounced on her with reproaches. Who are you to give me advice and comment on my action? As you were hovering around my husband, weren't you? But did anything come of it? Do you think I'll listen to you? And she scandalously kicked Bertha out of work. Finding out that Bertha apparently owed the bank a huge sum, she declared, and repay the debt immediately. If you don't return it soon, I'll report you to the police. And don't think I'm joking, only Ryan can demand repayment of the debt. He's the owner and he's still alive. I had a contract with him regarding this amount. Bera said, look at you, so clever. He may be alive, but for how long? The doctors aren't promising anything good. Well, fine, since there's a contract I'll wait, but get out of the bank. So Bertha was left without a job again and with a large debt. She and her son continued to live with Mary, although there were no issues with that, but with everything else she wasn't particularly worried about the debt for now, as she had a contract with the banker, and Bertha hoped for Ryan's recovery. Finding a job didn't work out as she would have liked, though. An acquaintance advised her to work as a cleaner in the hospital. They won't kick you out from there, that's for sure. Cleaners there are worth their weight in gold. The work is hard, but the pay, well, not that great, she said. Indeed, she was hired right away. Only later did Bertha find out that Ryan was in the same department though unconscious, and no one could say when or if he would regain consciousness. From the staff, Bertha learned that his wife rarely visited him, and not even him but the doctors, to find out if he's alive and when she's a real witch waiting for her husband to die. And imagine, sometimes she comes with her lover right in front of everyone. One of the nurses told Bertha, "Are you serious? Maybe it's not a lover but a relative or someone for work." Bertha found it hard to believe in such audacity. "Oh, it's true, she's making out with her relative right under everyone's noses," the nurse replied, and then Bertha became a witness to such a visit herself. Virginia came with the same guy she was hugging by the car. Now they both entered Ryan's room and Bertha became afraid. What if they, tired of waiting, decided to do something terrible, irreversible? She pressed her ear to the door of the room and started listening. "You see, he's lying here like a vegetable, not eating or drinking. How am I supposed to feed him?" Virginia argued. "Well, he must be fed somehow, through IVs, injections, etc." Her companion said discontentedly. "Well, yes, somehow, but I can't just inject what we need into him." The woman defended herself while her lover insisted. "You should have negotiated with the nurse, you're just stingy with money." "They would have agreed," the lover complained. "Oh thanks, I don't plan on ending up in jail," Berra retorted, "and I don't plan on waiting until retirement for you to come up with something," the lover snapped. Berra hurried away from the door. She really didn't want to be caught eavesdropping, but what could she do? From the conversation it was clear that Virginia and her lover Jack Wilson were poisoning her husband. She went to the police to report it, and now he's in a coma and it's unknown if he'll survive, she said. "Do you have any evidence?" the investigator asked. "Where would I get it from?" Berra was flustered. "I didn't record the conversation, so what are we supposed to confront this, Virginia, with? It's just your word against her. The only thing we can do is visit the hospital, talk to the doctor, but we have nothing to confront the wife with," the investigator concluded. Bertha realized she would have to take action herself, but how? She resorted to the only available option. She called Virginia. "I know the reason for your husband's illness. I won't discuss the moral aspect with you. I want to propose a deal. I have evidence of a crime, attempted murder of your husband, which, as you understand, carries a long sentence. I propose an exchange. I'll hand over the recording of the conversation with your lover and you'll sign a receipt for my debt," Bertha said. "And what guarantees do I have that you don't have other evidence?" Virginia asked briskly. "Only my word. I need a receipt, and who and how you plan to kill is not my concern," Berra replied. She wanted to meet them with a recorder and force this couple to talk about their plans. Ryan's wife agreed, and the meeting was set. Of course, Virginia, a thoroughly dishonest woman, didn't believe in any honest word. She intended to get rid of the unwanted witness, and for that she had an accomplice, Jack, her lover. "Jack, if we don't silence her, it's the end for us. We have to get rid of her. There's no other way," Virginia insisted. "And how do you propose we do that?" Jack, who had never killed anyone before, was surprised. "I leave that to you. You're a man, you should know better, and I assume you don't want to go to jail any more than I do," Virginia replied. "All right, I'll come up with something," Jack replied reluctantly. On the appointed day, Bertha went to the meeting. Mary said she had to go to work. "You've been called an urgent matter," she said, not wanting to involve her friend in such affairs. It was an extreme rash decision because Bertha didn't return from the meeting that evening or the next morning. Mary was beside herself with worry. She didn't know what to do now. Should she report it to the police? But she had no idea where Bertha had gone. Not even where she worked. She knew she was at the hospital, but which one? Jerome, she began questioning the crying boy. "Do you remember where Mommy worked?" "I do. She used to take me with her. She mops the floors there and goes to visit Uncle in one of the rooms, the one she used to work with at the bank." "Oh, that's something. Let's go. Maybe we'll find out something there." They arrived and heard good news. Ryan had come out of his coma during his time unconscious. His blood and entire system had been cleared, and he was feeling quite all right. Virginia, who was informed of this over the phone, rushed over showing her joy, but Ryan greeted her coldly and wearily. However, upon seeing Jerome, he was pleased. He had seen the boy before. Bertha had brought him to the bank once, but now he was with an unfamiliar woman. "Hello, little one, where's your mommy? Is she working?" "Hello, I don't know where she is. She was fired from the bank and then she worked here at the hospital and she used to come to you, but you were always asleep." Ryan looked questioningly at Mary, who told him about her friend's disappearance. "Don't worry, I'm awake now and I'll find your mom, Jerome. She won't go anywhere from us." He sent his wife home and talked to Mary, who told him everything she knew from Bertha, including her suspicions. "And you know, Ryan, I'm almost certain she was right." "Yes, I'm sure too. The doctors have already told me that my illness was the result of outside interference. But where else could I have gotten poison? Only at home, and certainly not from the housekeeper who has known me since childhood. But first we need to find Berra and then deal with Virginia." He informed the doctor that he was ready to be discharged. "Understand, there's a lot of business to attend to. I've let everything slip during my illness and find those who did this to me. It's absolutely necessary. Now that I'm smart, I won't take anything unnecessary at home. Enough I've suffered." Yes, he was still weak, but there was no reason to keep him in the hospital. They started preparing him for discharge, and as soon as he left the hospital he went straight to the police, reporting the disappearance of a person and poisoning. They remembered that not long ago a young woman had come with a similar statement and now she had disappeared. All of this was very suspicious. "I'm going home now where a potential poisoner lives and possibly a murderer, and I would like to have the ability to quickly call the police for safety. Something like a panic button. Is that possible I'll cover all the expenses. He was given such an opportunity, and upon arriving home Ryan immediately installed a hidden camera to monitor his wife. On the very first day he saw her tampering with the food she intended to give him, Ryan realized that all his suspicions as well as Bera's words were not unfounded. It was a horrifying discovery. He understood that there were no special feelings between him and Virginia anymore, but not to this extent. He was ready to live with this woman until old age, but if she asked for a divorce he wouldn't resist calmly letting her go and even doing everything possible to secure her future. And yet she had conceived a terrible crime, almost killing him, but why he didn't bother to offer any explanations. Here's the continuation of the text. Meanwhile, Virginia, unaware that her husband was aware of her intentions and actions, behaved as before, showing genuine joy at his return. She even set the table for a romantic dinner, but Ryan decided that he wouldn't eat or drink at home anymore. He doubted that his wife wouldn't decide to continue what she had started. However, there was still no evidence and he preferred to remain silent for now, not accusing his wife of a terrible crime without proof. He simply refused to eat or drink at home, citing that he didn't want to, and now he had a special diet. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan exclaimed. Virginia, folding her arms, "Why are you behaving like this?" "Because I don't want to eat what you cook. I don't like it," he retorted. In reality, he deliberately provoked his wife a little, hoping that she would eventually resort to more active actions, as this would give him the freedom and opportunity to openly show his attitude towards what was happening. And he waited for it. One day, pretending to be weak, he pretended to be resting in his room, and when the house quieted down he slowly came out. When he reached his wife's room he heard quite recognizable sounds and at the same time a male voice. "No, Virginia, understand, you're still dragging this out. How much longer will this continue? And you try it yourself. Did he figure it out, or did someone gossip to him? Have you dealt with that snake?" "Bertha, for sure, of course I did everything I could, and you're still dragging it out. Understand, he eats nothing at home and doesn't drink, only water from the tap, and even then he rinses the cup thoroughly first. What else can I do? Figure something out. Understand, I can't wait much longer." "Jack, darling, do you think I can?" Ryan opened the door and saw his wife lying in the arms of some young man. The lover stared at him in astonishment. "Well," Virginia said, "Ryan, come on, tell me that I misunderstood everything, that it's not what I think." "Not like that," she exclaimed. "I don't know what you're thinking, but there was nothing like that here," she said, pulling the covers over herself. Her lover apparently decided to act differently. "Well, if you understand everything," the guy said insolently, "then just accept it as it is. Sometimes it happens, and I couldn't care less about what happens. For where you both poisoned me together and you killed Bertha alone, although what difference does it make? You will both be sent to prison, and you know, Virginia, you made a big mistake. Just think, if you had confessed everything and decided to divorce me, I wouldn't have said a bad word. I would have let you go and even made you a gift for your wedding." "We don't need your gifts," the wife said angrily. "How was I supposed to know what you would do if you found out I loved someone else? And anyway, I don't need your gifts, I need everything." "Got it, I got it. Probably such a handsome boy is worth a lot." "Well, okay, let's not talk about it. Get dressed and wait for the police." "Why did you come up with this? What police?" Virginia was scared, realizing that the matter was serious. Her lover also began to hurry to dress, but it was too late. Law enforcement arrived, detained the poisoners. Jack began to be questioned about where he had disposed of Bertha's body. What Bera? He initially denied, but then he had to confess. "Well, yes, I wanted to kill her. She knew too much, blackmailed us. By the way, she's to blame herself. I took her to the forest. I wanted to do something there but didn't have time. She broke free and ran away." "And where did she run to? Where did you take her?" the investigator asked. "You know, there are no addresses in the forest, but I can show the place." "And she ran towards the swamp. I was going after her, but she was already walking around there almost waist deep in water." "Well, I'm not going after her. Probably she drowned there, but I have nothing to do with it. I didn't push her there. So if you had killed her, she wouldn't have drowned in the swamp." "Well, yeah, that is no, maybe I wouldn't have killed her, just threatened her, that's all. I'm not a killer, never have been." "So the first attempt, it turns out, was unsuccessful." "Well, maybe so, but there won't be a second attempt. I'm not going to kill anyone later. It was all Virginia's idea." "And what about herself now? Will she come out clean?" "Virginia is unlikely to come out clean, but the police weren't planning to search for Bertha in the swamp. The person drowned. What can you do? No one is going to venture into the mere after her." But Ryan was ready for even that. He remembered that Bertha had tried to save his business from bankruptcy and him from death, and he simply couldn't leave things as they were. So upon learning exactly where she disappeared, he went there. Of course, he was afraid to enter the swamp. He just stood on the edge and decided to circumvent the area. He simply couldn't believe that such a woman had perished. Maybe she managed to get out somehow, or someone saw something and perhaps even helped her. He began to navigate the swampy area, and indeed at the other end he found an abandoned village, but there apparently no one lived, and not for a long time. The houses were empty, half collapsed, showing no sign of human presence. However, smoke was rising above one house which appeared more well kept. Ryan approached, knocked, and upon hearing a woman's voice, pushed the door open. There sat an elderly woman, and next to her on the bed laid Bera. It was unbelievable. She was clearly ill but alive. "Bertha," Ryan rushed to her, "I knew I would find you. Knew you couldn't have perished, and He cautiously hugged her, suddenly realizing that she had become dear to him from the moment she came to the bank to explain about the debt. "Well, they came for you just as I said, and she could have perished. I barely found her alive," the hostess said. Ryan Barra whispered weakly. "I really almost died. Clary saved me miraculously." "And who are you?" Ryan turned to her. "I live here, sort of a recluse. The house was abandoned, so I took it. People sometimes come to me for whatever reason. I seem to be known as a herbalist here. Well, they come for various herbs, that's all." She sighed, and Ryan suddenly felt a strong sympathy for this quiet woman. He understood people